I've been a participant in the workshop for the past 5 out of 6 years. At first, I wasn't sure what it would be like. I've attended many conferences in the United States and sometimes in England, but they're big conferences. They are the kinds of conferences where there are panels going on and where people are chit-chatting and connecting between, going to different panels. They're usually 3 or 4 day affairs, and they're very, very tiring, and they have, hundreds or thousands of people. I've also been to individual manuscript workshop conferences where everybody focuses just on one book. These happen occasionally in the United States when somebody has funding that they can bring people in, and we have a few hours to work on that project. I've never taken part in anything quite like the workshop, where we do this for the better part of 2 weeks. It's an extraordinary thing to be a part of because, of course, my authors are benefiting tremendously, but I also get to hear about projects that my competitors and frankly friends are working on for their presses, and to learn from the scholars that they're publishing and to listen to the kinds of conversations that happen. I think the camaraderie among the authors and the editors, and of course the people that make all of this possible, our sponsors, what we have happen during those 2 weeks is the kind of community that is very, very hard to create. It's partially because it's a group and we're all together doing everything together, most days, and that creates a bond that from year to year, I think is extremely strong. But also during the course of the year, there are people who are not my authors, who I've met on these trips, who I'm in touch with, not to try to poach them from my list, but to actually, ask them to be reviewers and to hear what they have to say about what's going on wherever they're living and teaching. So that's been extremely valuable and important to me. On the actually what happens during the workshop and during your few hours that you're workshopping, you have the benefit of 3, 5, 6 scholars, depending on the number that is chosen for each project, of getting very intensive, detailed feedback on their feelings about the project as a whole, but also how they're reading each chapter and what parts they think need improvement and works that the author may not know about. And I think that there's disagreement and friction between the participants who are the experts. They don't all come at this with the same point of view, nor does the author, but what we're getting are really important scholarly conversations and the kind of important historiographical debate that very few authors ever get to benefit from. In the form of a reader's report, you get something flat that you just respond to, from the pixels on your screen or a piece of paper. Here, it's actually the guts of talking through a project. And I know that that has changed and reshaped projects. It's also led authors, to think, I'm on the right path. Look, these scholars agree with me. Here's what I can do more of. And so I think that that has been invaluable for my authors. It's really good for me to hear. I take a lot of notes at the workshop. I absolutely listen to the recordings if we have them afterwards. Not everything can be enacted. It would be impossible. Lots of people have lots of opinions on the books, but there are important voices that get taken into consideration as we revise the books. And those manuscripts, I think, have made important changes afterwards. And I'm really proud of what my authors have produced. Many of the books that I have workshopped have come out, and they're winning prizes and they're getting attention. And I take that as a sign of this process being one of the many things that's contributing to those becoming fantastic books. One of the books that I'm most proud of doing and that's recently come out is a memoir that was written by somebody who of Polish descent who had moved to Israel, who gets caught up and sent to the Gulag and manages to survive 4 or 5 years and make it home to Israel in the end. The book was published in Hebrew. It was published in French in the 1940s, way before Gulag Archipelago. And I was able for the first time, obviously working with a team of people, a translator, an author of an introduction, and a foreword author, and the cooperation of the author's 97-year-old son to bring this really important book back into public awareness and into awareness for the first time in the English language. So I'm really proud of that book. And another one of my colleagues did a book called Gulag Boss. That was a diary of somebody who worked in a camp and was not one of the prisoners, but was in fact one of the people who, perpetrated violence. And so we've tried very hard to find those primary texts that we consider really important, in addition to the scholarly work that we're publishing that's analytical, and in addition to our trade list. I think that other works that I'm doing, for instance, Anna Muller and Kate LeBeau at Oxford are doing another primary text, an eyewitness account of living in Warsaw during the occupation, and that has never been published in any language and has been in a Warsaw archive. So I'm looking forward to that one coming out, and that I think we will be able to, I hope, have it translated into Polish. I'm really glad that we did it on Zoom this year, because my author got fantastic feedback, and she needed it because the book needed to go into production this fall. So I couldn't have held that one off, but there are other authors that I did delay, because I think that the experience on the ground can't be replaced. And I think that they weren't in an urgent time frame for their projects. And I thought, if not next year, whenever we can do it, we'll all be so happy to be together, but they will get so much more out of it. And one of them, in fact, is learning Polish. She knew a little bit, but she's learning Polish, and she asked me specifically to move to next year because she thinks her Polish will be better, and she can't wait to be able to speak to people in Polish. And as much as the formal activities that we're all doing, and the touring has been an incredibly important part of the workshop to me, getting to see places that I've read about, but I've never gotten to experience, in any way in person, that has been just delightful. But I also think that my authors and the way that they react and the things that they're interested in have taught me a lot about them. They're absolutely people I feel closer to after the workshop. And I suspect, I think in every case have remained, much closer to than many of my other authors. Just a few weeks ago, I had a Zoom social with two of my authors from different years that knew each other from graduate school. And we're going to bring in another person the next time we do it. And we didn't talk all about their books. We reflected on things about Eastern and Central Europe, and about one of them had just been in Poland, staying on a Fulbright for many months and come back during the pandemic. And the other one has been, stuck essentially in her apartment alone teaching. And so it was a really nice thing to be able to share that experience. And of course, all of us just wish that this summer we could have been back in Poland together. But until that's possible, it was a really wonderful thing to be able to see them and to be able to catch up. One of the treasures of the workshop, which I had no reason to expect when I was first asked, and I was asked several times before there was a year when I was able to do the workshop. Despite having Polish descent, I never had desperately wanted to visit Poland. I had thought about it, but it wasn't a place that I had really strongly positive feelings about. And when I was able to visit for the first time, the second time, the third time, the fifth time, every place that we go has taught me so much. And I saw a side of Poland that wasn't the image of Poland that I had. It wasn't the gray communist vision of Poland that I had formed in my head. It was a place of, tremendous diversity and cosmopolitanism. I've come to understand things about Polish politics, positive and negative, that I probably would not have paid very much attention to. And the things we do that are part of the workshop, like visiting museums, visiting palaces, visiting sites, and going to small towns, especially, even more so than Warsaw and Krakow, going to the small towns and learning about the histories of place, I look forward to every single year. I know that my manuscripts are important, and it's really important for my authors to do the trip, but for me personally, the workshop has been a tremendous opportunity to learn about my culture, or part of my, heritage, but also to break down the prejudices that I perhaps had in thinking about what the communist world looked like, and what a post-communist society looks like, and what democracy looks like in Eastern Europe. So I just wanted to add that it's not what I expected. I didn't think after going once that I would ever do the trip again. I thought this is a one-shot opportunity. I'm going to take it. And, years later, I see that this is something I always hope I have a manuscript because I so enjoy and value my time in Poland. Two of my relatives, one grandmother and one grandfather, um, were from towns between Minsk and Pensk, and I only wanted to be able to get to Kiev and to be able to take a little time to maybe see where they grew up, a long time ago. And I didn't get to do it. And, I just didn't have a book last year and I didn't get to go. And I know that the part of the Kiev trip was short, so I don't know that I would have been able to do it. But my mother and I talked about it for a long time, because we know a lot of information. And I hope one year that I get to do that. I know the trip isn't all about me and my family, but there'll be no time in the world when I'll ever get closer than during a workshop.